You don't count.
There you go. Hey, wait, right here.
You get it after.
Right here. Yep. We're gonna sit right in the second row. I'm right back.
I already got mine.
Oh, my God. I mean, there's some.
You twisted my camera. You're not saying.
Oh, but I don't know.
Oh, the pocket Olympics are.
Right here. Yes. So we will leave that roll call. She's
Commissioner, she only like, I was talking, I was
She works for Jackie.
Yeah, she used to still.
Oh, I know that's not, she has to be the.
Oh, you I was the chairman.
It was a little like I picked up the pen, like, I don't do this, like, you know, she wanted me to. Just. Yes. So nice. Oh, okay.
And so.
Like how I can.
So. I can't tell you how long it came from. He was the former chairman.
We only got this one back a year ago. And he told me like, it's not really, he gets frustrated and all like, he didn't want you leaving. I'm like, that's not funny. But overall, the class is teaching me. And he's like, Mom, like, this is new stuff, like, I have to really try. I'm like, it's okay. Like, how about
You wanted to make sure he was still here.
That all has their.
Yeah.
So he's like, Mom, it's so much easier to talk to the teachers.
Yes. If you didn't get rid of me that easy, or it's gonna be.
I like it.
You need to have a local guy.
I've been singing your.
Somebody-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Little flower. I know one of my. She probably should have done it 2 years ago. 2-hour conversation. So. I was trying to get her phone, whatever. And he's like, what? I said, just. First of all, she knows. She knows. Yes. She knows a lot of things.
He called me right after the last one.
That'll be so good.
Talk about it.
Very impactful. It was a really good conversation. And I've started tutoring her son after school now.
Oh, good.
So, and she was like, what did I get her? I said, tutoring him. She's like, we need to keep up with the math. I was like, I am going. She's like, did you both your meeting? I said, yes.
I need to step my help her learn statistics.
Oh. I can do it, I just don't enjoy it.
She's in college and it's her last class that she's required to take. And she decides to go with statistics thinking this will be easy.
No, it's so ridiculous. I'd rather give me trait any day of the week.
Yeah. But it is useful. And it was like,
Yeah, it is, I mean, like, it was, like, when I took the extra math statistics test, it was hard.
I'm like, I don't think that's what to do for that.
Yeah, we're just waiting for the car.
Yeah, we're so muted.
That's all right. Is Kyle coming?
No, he's coming.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna wait. We'll call this meeting to order at 4:37. Go ahead and please rise from catch. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All of you would call the roll, please.
Jones,
Here.
Barnes,
Here.
Wheeler,
Here.
Casper,
Here.
Olsted,
Here.
Renner, Swint.
Here. We have a quorum, we proceed. Item number 4 is the superintendent evaluation. Everybody should have had a chance to review that. if we have a motion on the table, what would we like to discuss first?
Can I pose a question, but
Yes, you may.
are we expecting Dr. Fadley or is he not attending?
To my knowledge, Dr. Fadley was attending, but I have not heard an update on whether he would still be attending.
I can I offer something? Okay,
Yes.
I had spoken with Kyle earlier and had suggested that Dr. Basin not be in attendance during the open discussion. I just thought that it might be fair to not have him here, and then he said, he would think about it, but
I already told them not to be. That's what I
Okay.
understood. I thought, okay.
yeah, the only thing I know is he said that he would think about it and let me know.
Okay.
Can I just say that
Yes.
I asked about having his name here, and they said, Taylor indicated you would be here right now, but will come in later.
Oh,
Okay,
choose your question. Dr. Fadley, will you be sitting at the table this evening?
I was told by the president not to come,
Okay.
okay.
so
Did you intend to stay for the meeting? That was a question posed back.
yeah, I would like to. I mean, I planned on being here, I was told not to come.
It's your choice. I think if you're comfortable with that, board members, are you comfortable with?
I,
Board members are comfortable, we can proceed.
do you have the documents that Kyle has with all of the,
Yes, I have the compiled list.
but do you have the individual votes? He had told me that he had all of that,
I did not
or
receive,
not votes, but the tally sheet from,
I did not receive individual tally
okay,
sheets.
I needed that and say you have that.
I have the compiled that the entire board was provided.
They should. I have that zip file. Was
Oops.
sent out with the evaluation. sent.
I did not open the zip file, I opened every document, so let's see.
Oh, yes.
There were 8 documents in the zip file. I got all of it.
Oh. Yes, it's on the zip file.
Okay, I'm trying to get it to download, so I'm having an issue. Oops.
I guess, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I got some questions, I guess, before I intend on casting a vote on whatever the motion might be.
Go ahead.
So number one, under the performance improvement expectations and goals, it indicated that there was to be training to improve staff interaction, culture, and communication. This was marked as being compliant, both on the self-evaluation as well as the board's overall evaluation. My question is, what evidence has been provided related to that training that it was completed to improve staff interaction, culture, and communication? And that question, I guess, would be directed towards my fellow board members that felt that was compliant. And certainly, I guess I'd be open to Dr. Bailey's response, Mr. Chairman, as it relates to that question.
We will start with board members first. Mr. Wallstead? Did you mark that as compliant? And if so, could you specify where you saw that that was compliant?
I guess just recognizing it as performance improvement plan and his interaction with Dr. Schatz. I made the assumption that he was working more with his staff relations, and so that's how at least the benefit of the doubt is.
Mr. Motion. If you have anything to add, nobody has to
I
add,
will-
just to be clear.
Yeah, no, I will add that, I did this entire review based on my position as a board member from July till now.
I mean, it's been on the improvement plan progressive opinions. From before my time went through it. I marked compliant in regard to the information from Dr. Schatz and the calendar of meetings with staff. Now, I will say I am still filtering through that, and forming my own opinion of how that process is playing out. So my compliance is in regard to just what has been submitted.
I don't have anything to add to that.
Mrs. Willow, do you have anything to add?
I based it also, very similarly to Mr. Wellstead and, Mr. Barsh in regards to the individual trainings with, Dr. Schatz. I had assumed, and if I assumed inaccurately, that that's where that was going to be falling into, and then also the meetings with, Mr. Winter.
So I mark this as non-compliant. Because in it, it's very clearly defined that training will be identified and agreed upon with the school board. And that the board president would at that time have oversight. The board, in my opinion, has not agreed upon the training portion of this. We agreed upon a relationship that he would have with Dr. Schatz. So I felt like we were lacking in the areas of the training to improve the staff interaction culture and communication. And that wasn't identified. That is why I took that position on that. I didn't feel that we met the requirement for that to be considered compliant.
May I respond?
Yes, sir.
So the training specifically in the PIP identified that I was supposed to work with staff on training to improve the culture and climate of the school district. We did hold a training with Vital Network and the building level teams that were responsible for administering the building site surveys in the school district. During that meeting facilitated by Vital Network, that training shared with the team how to go about looking at the data, how to go about processing the individual items and scoring in that particular document. And then also shared the framework of how to develop priorities as a school district in improving the culture across the district. And extremely important in that regard is the fact that culture does not rest in one individual. Culture rests on the entire school organization. So that's the reason for the training. The leadership teams at each building, plus the district's team, inclusive of Amanda Denevin, the District Vitality Committee, which is going to be looking at the district level data. And all of that information was provided in the summary report that I provided to the board document that you reviewed. And if you'd like, I could search through my calendar. I was not aware that I was supposed to be here again. Mr. Ringer told me not to attend. And I was honoring the wishes of the board president. So if you'd like me to search for the date that that training occurred, I could certainly go through my calendar and do that.
I think specifically what Mr. Junt is getting to is in here, you look, it's to improve staff interaction, culture and communication, but the PIP was designed for the superintendent for your specific training. And so I think that is where there's a disconnect in this, that I understand the training, and I think it's extremely vital that you work with the staff, right? That's going to create those relationships. So I think that's, but for me, the missing point was this was specific to you, not to
And
the
I can
staff.
respond to that if you allow me.
Yes.
Mr. Swint. So in my mentoring meetings with Dr. Schatz, one of the focuses has been the topic of organizational culture, district culture, and steps that could be utilized in moving forward with that particular topic. So I discussed my ideas with him. We interacted as mentor administrator relations do. We discussed things. I talked about my ideas about forming a district leadership council He thought that was an excellent idea. That leadership council has been formed. Trainings in terms of Dr. Schatz working directly with me, giving me examples of how he did things while he was a superintendent was much appreciated. So respect to that, the board did approve the mentor superintendent agreement with Mr. Schatz, and it was identified the things that we should be working on, and I've been working on those things with him every other week since July. We've met for 90 minutes at a time. So I do believe I've met that particular goal in the PIP, as is referenced by many of the actions that have been taken since July.
Okay, Mr. John, anything else?
I've got a list of a few more if I may continue.
Mr. Render, I will hand the meeting off to you.
Sorry for being late. What part are we at?
We are specifically, Mr. Junt has asked for responses from the board relating to compliancy and why they marked a specific area as compliant and what they were using for the data that would support that decision to mark it compliant.
From the individual board members
Yes.
specifically to. Okay. Okay. So who's gone then? Who's answering that?
Everybody has responded to that. Dr. Bailey has been given an opportunity. He had said that you had requested that he not attend, but he has decided that he would like to be.
Mr. Renner, I don't want to disrespect your directives
No,
to
that's totally
me.
fine.
But there was conversation. I was looking at the live stream of the meeting. And there was a question asked, is Dr. Fado planning on attending the meeting? Yes, I was always planning on attending the meeting, and I came in to state that to the board. And they asked me to sit down, that I could stay.
We said that he
But
was.
as board president, if you'd like me to leave, I'm certainly more than willing to do so. I just think that the documents that were shared with me from the individual responses from the board very clearly demonstrate compliance from 5 board members on a majority of the items, with 2 board members split on compliant versus non-compliant. So I was anticipating this meeting be a validation of all of the hard work that I've done to meet the expectations of the board, not as an inquisition.
Mr. Chair, point of order. I don't think we've asked him to identify specifics to the fact that the board had our responses, and this is a board meeting that we should be flowing through those ourselves.
Okay, point of order well taken. So Mr. Junt has wanted responses from everybody here.
But I'm willing to go, I do think we should evaluate your plan of how you planned on and intended for the meeting to run.
So I just wanted to explain to everybody how I did this. So I took everybody's responses. For example, on question 1, we had 4 board members mark compliant, 3 mark non-compliant. So then I used simple majority rules to mark compliant, non-compliant on each item. At the end there, I looked at the end where I marked satisfactory or unsatisfactory, I looked at overall. Almost all of these were marked compliant except for 2. I based it all on that, not on anybody's comments. I copied and pasted everyone's comments into the last part of the document. That was not editing, that was everyone's full comments. That is my suggestion, that we approve this as satisfactory, but it's ultimately what the board wants to do. So.
No motion has been made at this time of this.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. John.
I think that it's prudent that the board have a discussion on any of the specific items within the evaluation and the PIP in terms of compliant or non-compliant. I feel that there's some questions in some of the areas where, at least to me, there's not been evidence provided that would indicate compliance in some areas. And I guess I'm looking for discussion and feedback from board members on maybe something that I overlooked if I had it marked non-compliant, or clarification that Dr. Bigley could provide on some of those areas, so.
Which ones specifically?
So we touched on number one. The next two that I have are related to the listening sessions, both the staff listening session and the community listening session. We specifically defined what the scope of these listening sessions were to be as it relates to the staff listening session. That was to be held with staff after we as survey, which in looking at the compiled board response, I believe that was marked as non-compliant related to the engagement of the WIA members. So my first question is, I think number 8, staff listening session could be compliant if we are saying that the staff WIA survey has not been completed, because the listening session was supposed to occur after the WIA survey. But most importantly to me is the listening sessions were to be very specific to how Dr. Fadley could maintain a positive culture that impacts the ability to staff to perform their jobs. And when I looked at the self-evaluation in terms of the staff listening sessions, the questions that were linked in the Excel documents, to me, those did not focus in on how the superintendent could maintain a positive culture. Same thing with the community listening session. Yes, there's been listening sessions that have been held with staff. There's been listening sessions that have been held with the community. But the community listening sessions, when I click the link in the document, it brings us to the schedule, which covers enrollment growth and boundary setting process, measure 4 in new elementary school, and boundary setting with RSP and associates. I don't see how any of those community listening sessions focused in on specifically what those sessions were to be per the performance improvement plan. So I don't know how those can be marked compliant when those listening sessions did not cover the very topic that was supposed to be covered in those.
Any other board members?
Not at this time. I have comments, but not at this time.
I'm in agreement with Mr. Junt. I had reached out with that same questions. And I don't see how we mark that compliant, and I understand if the portion of this that I am trying to communicate across to board members is we were very specific in the PIP and what we wanted to accomplish. And that was not accomplished, and yet it's marked here by the majority of the board as compliant, which would be confusing to me as a board member on how we accomplish compliance.
May I ask a question? We're looking at number 2, correct?
Listening sessions are number 8 and 9.
8 and 9. All right, thank you. That's where I was getting a little bit confused because I was looking at number 2. That was not meshing on my document here. Thank you.
So in conversations with President Brenner, part of the work on engaging the school district on items affecting culture was the Vital Network survey. In our one-on-one meetings, which we held every other week since July, we did have a conversation about utilizing the Vital Network platform to collect this information, and it was agreed upon that we would use that as the tool to collect the information from the whole organization, because that includes not only WIA members, but also members that are not part of WIA, because culture is just not isolated to the professional staff. It's also the support staff. In reference to the listening sessions, I have gone to multiple staff meetings and been present. Specifically, did I ask them to respond to items specifically on that? I did not. However, there were opportunities for staff members to present their questions of me. Most of those questions had to do with things not related to specifically to positive culture. It had to do with the number of custodians that were at the buildings, the number of staff that were approved for support of programs in the buildings. And I did my best to express that the budget of the school district is not unlimited resources, and we have to make some very difficult decisions on what we approve as new staff and what we don't. Since that time, I've been working diligently with every single building administration, the greater special ed staff have attended those meetings, as well as WOMAC, because a lot of the concerns were around special ed para staffing. We've made some significant changes with the input from the business manager, the HR director, the director of WOMAC, and building administration and staff. Those are all items related to culture within the organization and support. So technically, did they occur as to the fashion that was written? No, but there was some agreement with board president that I was allotted some flexibility to use the Vital Network platform for the culture stuff, because that's what that survey is about.
Are you talking about
May I-
number one, Dr. Bailey? Are you talking about? He's talking about the survey.
Say that again.
This, the survey. The WIA survey. Okay, oh, okay, I see what you're saying, yeah. Go ahead, Ms. Wheeler.
Did you give Dr. Fagley permission to use the Vital Network to create the survey instead of having Leah create the survey to direct us towards staff as was directed by the board? Because that was where I had a huge question, and I did reference that in my comments about using the Vital Network survey. And that reflected in my non-compliance for number 7, engaging Leah members and staff survey on school culture. So did you tell him he could?
Did I tell him he could? I guess I told him I didn't have any problem with it. When the board wanted. We had surveyed, I guess, looking back on it, I don't understand why we wouldn't survey all of them. We was technically included in the survey,
Yeah,
but. I don't know that it's up to me to give permission to, it's more than it did. I mean, did any other board member reach out concerned in the last couple months about it? Dr. Fagan, because this has been stuff that's been sent to board members weekly.
at the time I did not, and I'm sparking these questions based on this general conversation.
I can respond to that. Clearly, if there were changes that we had expected as board members and it had been brought to us for a vote, that would have been an alteration and we would have had knowledge that that was the survey that was being used as the WIA survey. I reached out prior to this meeting and requested the WIA survey results, and the response I received was that it was Vital Network. Prior to that, I had no knowledge that that would be the survey utilized for this. So I, as one board member, had never had it communicated that we were going off the path of what the expectation was. It wasn't told to us that Vital was going to take over WIA. When we sat in the meeting and we designed this kit, that this was my part. I know because I spoke on this many times.
Here's what I don't. To me, this doesn't say that WIA is going to develop a survey. To me, this says you're gonna survey the WIA members.
When we voted on this, when we sat, we were very clear in the communication and context of the conversation before we voted for the PIP. Before we sat in that room and said, this is what we were gonna do. I was very clear that the design of this was for WIA to perform a survey, that it could not be related to HR and could not be related to specifically the administration of the buildings deciding, or the superintendent, what would be the content of that survey. That was the conversation that occurred in that meeting. That's what the board agreed upon. That's what my intent was when we voted on this. Now, if there was a change, it was not communicated that that survey was going to take over that position. So that's my confusion in that.
Okay.
And that's why I
like-
emailed it.
that might have been, I don't disagree that that's your intent. But it's not clear to me that that's the case. In fact, when I read this, the vital network survey is actually more encompassing than just, it's all district staff, not just the union. So I guess that's why when it was explained to me, because I questioned the same thing in meetings with Dr. Fabian. Are we doing this? And he explained what he just told you guys. And my thought is you guys are getting the same update that I am weekly, and like, I don't think all responsibility there should be placed on my shoulders for not meeting your intent, because I feel like it went actually beyond what I read as the intent. Any other board members, any other comments? Dr. Fabian? But, Mr. John, go ahead.
I would just add that even if the vital network survey was the method to accomplish what's listed in number 10, again, similar to the listening sessions, I don't think that it specifically addresses what the board has asked for, which is to ask how the superintendent can maintain a positive culture that positively impacts the ability to staff to responsibly perform their jobs. I don't think that any one of those have been met with the vital network, the community listening sessions, or any of the evidence that's been provided within the self-assessment in the linked documents.
Any other board members, before I call?
How do we get here without anybody calling our attention to Dr. Faber? I mean, we've been getting this stuff weekly, a lot of information. How does anybody, get here today, say, well, I mean, I don't understand about talking to Dr. Fadley beforehand. That's what I don't understand. Why wouldn't we have brought this up to him beforehand? I mean, personally.
He's given the document. He knows what the expectations of the document are. We're not supposed to feed him through this process. He has a bi-weekly meeting with our chair. And if he's not meeting something, it's very easy for the chair to reach out. I've had a few meetings with Dr. Fadley throughout the process and asked questions and share with him my position on things. I think we all have jobs, other things that we're doing, and we have given direction in this. And I think so for us to have to go above and beyond, we should have done what we discussed before, which was have individual board members take turns managing the project. Because that's what that would be. We left it between the superintendent and the board president to accomplish these tasks in a short period of time. He can't have them all done, agreed upon, right? Has he made progress? Yes. But I think we have to look at the document and fairly mark the ones that are not compliant yet. That doesn't mean they won't be compliant in a few months.
Thank you, Mr. Swint. Dr. Fadley.
I just want to say that throughout this process, I just want to remind the board that the work that has gone into the integrity that's taken place and really taking the improvement plan seriously. And a lot of the leadership characteristics that were required when I first came to the district. And there was a lot of work to do. And I think everybody would realize that there were some decisions that needed to be made and they weren't popular with anyone. Well, maybe some, but they were done in the best interest of kids. The PIP was completed with integrity and it was completed, taken extremely seriously, as Mr. Renner can attest to in our one-on-one meetings. And the amount of time that I took to put together the weekly progress reports to the board. I even on multiple occasions asked Mr. Renner in our one-on-one meetings because I hadn't heard anything. Is everything going the way that the board expects? And he said, no, I haven't heard any questions or any comments or any of those types of things. So I proceeded to implement that. and to continue to work on the leadership characteristics. A lot of changes have happened in this district since that improvement plan took place. And I think they're positive things. But I guess all I can say is I'm a person of character and integrity, and I did my absolute best to meet the needs of the board. And I'm not going to apologize for all of the hard work that this organization and this team has put in to make the changes that the board had asked for, because it wasn't just one person. One person is not culture. And the reason the Vital Network survey was used is because it is developed based on psychometrics and analytics. And I'm not going to be the expert at interpreting that survey. That's for the people who developed the survey. But there's a lot of meat and a lot of work and a lot of change that's happened, not only at the district level, but in the building level for building leaders. And I think if you were to ask some of them, they got their eyes opened up on a number of things that they are now prioritizing for organizational improvement. And that's what it's all about. It's not about me. It's about the organization and it's about the kids. And I will hang my hat on that every time. If it's about me, make it about me. But it's not about me. It's about the organization.
The PIP is about you.
The PIP is about the organization and my leadership.
The PIP specifically for you.
I would disagree.
I would not. I know PIP is personal improvement plan.
Okay, okay,
It's actually, it's a professional improvement plan.
okay, guys, it's for you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barster, do something. As a new board member, I been really intentionally trying to observe and listen and kind of feel what is happening throughout the district. Personally speaking, I feel kind of inequipped in this evaluation, both due to the inconsistency of the board and the understanding that's being demonstrated of the PIP as it was decided before my tenure. And then also the improvement plan and seeing it through. I don't want to say out of the agenda, but I think we're still on the improvement plan. I will say that no one person is defines the entire culture of an organization, but you are responsible for the culture of the organization.
I would agree.
And that is the number one priority. That's the only way you can do what's right for kids. Is if our educators feel empowered in their roles and comfortable in their roles, supported in their roles, and that's culture. That's all culture. It has nothing to do with the decisions being made. It's the we-ness of the decisions and just the motivation of a positive culture pushes through those decisions. I think we'd be well past that. So I would say as an individual board member being new to this board, I would honestly call for revitalization of it and maybe be more clear of what we're intending and what we're looking for. Very, very detailed in the compliance and non-compliance, because right now it's easy to say, here's a piece of paper, here's what I was asked to do. And I feel like the majority of the board is kind of supportive of that, but there is definitely lack of clarity in the purpose of the PIP. And I think what is being requested from Dr. Bailey, and we're not getting, I don't think, the results intended from the PIP, which are culture minded. Decisions aside that influence the district in a positive manner. That to me, I feel like we're talking about separate things. I personally feel inequipped as a new board member to weigh in on this. I am diving in to inform my own opinion. And I can't objectively do that if we're not seeing this process through exactly as it was intended, and there's a lack of participation, I guess. So right now, that's where I'm at. We can get into the PIP of the secondary agenda item, but right now, from getting into this part of the meeting, the PIP as it was designed and what we're getting from it, there's a lack of cohesiveness here. Maybe it needs to be evaluated.
we can discuss that next for sure. I guess after discussions here, is there anybody that maybe from Mr. Johnson, Mr. Swiss, concerns, does anybody want to change how they voted on anything, I guess, would be my question.
Yes. But I do have some changes to make based on conversation, but I also have some areas of concern. And I don't know how you want to go about doing that. I don't know if Mr. Trump is finished. I don't want to jump ahead of him.
Mr. Chairman, if I may say that. Appreciate your vulnerability, Mr. Marsh, and what you just shared, your honesty and your perspective being the freshman on this board. I've been in positions of leadership and I'm a little bit with Mr. Kasmer. Position of leadership that I was in. There was always an annual meeting that people had 364 days to bring grievances to the leadership or the leadership team. But it seemed like if there was any, they always picked the one meeting. I don't think a meeting like this is the place to air grievances with the leadership. We're concerned about communicating and culture of an organization. I believe it's incumbent upon us as individual board members. We feel that there's an issue to have a meeting with Dr. Fadley and discuss those things in private and begin at that point one-to-one, rather than bring it to the public table that is here. Dr. Fadley, there's obvious issues that have arisen in relationship with your staff, and I know it's challenging to sit here and listen to these meetings. Culture is a reflection of the leadership, and attitude reflects leadership. I guess if there's truly issues, I would just implore you as an individual to just own things and make those changes. I believe you've worked hard in the performance improvement plan, the professional improvement plan. We receive the weekly updates. We are not uninformed. We have loads of information on a weekly basis from our superintendent, from the leadership team. I believe that we felt like things were not being steered on track or being met. Probably something should have been said long before a meeting like this. So I'm with Mr. Kasmer. I'm not sure how we got here. Right now, where we are, things could have been addressed long before this. All I can say, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So,
Very respectfully, I'm going to disagree. We, as school board members, are elected, and one of our primary goals is to hire and oversee a superintendent. When an individual board member sits down and talks about certain things with the superintendent, can he get clouded as, is that a directive or is that coming from the board? And that should never happen. That should always come from the chair. So if I were to go into his office and say, I don't like X, Y, and Z, you need to fix X, Y, and Z, I personally don't feel that that is appropriate. Those are questions and statements that I should be giving to my chair, which I've done quite a bit. Kyle and I talk on the phone quite a bit. And I address general information with Dr. Fadley. Dr. Fadley and I speak quite a bit, but it's more generalized rather than specific. And there's 2 evaluations done on all superintendents. And this is the time and place to have these discussions. Now, I have asked that Dr. Fadley not be here during this time because I had a feeling this was going to be a little bit ugly. We all have our own perspectives. I looked at it as, why put someone in front of the firing squad before the jury's had an opportunity to give a verdict? So that we could have a discussion openly and then come to a consensus and then be able to sit down with Dr. Fadley and express this is what we like. This is what we have caveats to, and these are the things that need to be changed. That was strictly my own perspective. And I shared that with Kyle as well.
I appreciate that, Ms. Wheeler, but I'd also like you to sit in Mr. Fadley's chair.
I would. It's not an easy chair to sit in. And I do respect the fact that he is sitting there and that he is staying. I do respect this.
I worried about this when we were gonna do an evaluation on the fifth. Feel that this would be, is what happened. I don't like the evaluation around that. I don't think it's right. I think we should have done a different evaluation. And evaluate the bid separately. It's a tough deal. I mean, I don't think for the professional improvement plan is done. And it really doesn't give in the superintendent any benefit of the doubt. You know, you either have to be there or not. You know, so I just don't think the evaluation should have been done on the bill. And I worried that this exactly thing would happen. But we're here right now, we have to do something about it.
I think it's, I mean, Dr. Staley's seasoned vet, he's been in the profession for a long time, and I think him sitting here is appropriate, and we can have professional conversation now. We started in professional improvement plan, you gotta end one at some point. I, even being new to this board, I mean, the process is not pretty. It's just how it goes. And we maintain professionalism and we go through it and we own it, and we are held accountable to what we set ourselves up for. And I think I say that because, again, as a new board member, I've been trying to inform my own opinion. So my personal diving into it, and what we do with our individual meetings with Dr. Fadley is what defines us as board members in respect to the one board versus the individual board. And so I think it's appropriate to have conversations one-on-one with Dr. Fadley, as long as you know how to walk those lines. And then you can communicate directly through board leadership. I say that I have informed Dr. Fadley and Chairman Mr. Renner, to inform my personal opinion, I am meeting with leadership of one of our schools once a week during the school day, on my own time, independent of Dr. Fadley. And in those conversations with school leadership, very professional. This is exactly my role as a board member, and this is exactly what I'm going to do with this information. So you know how I'm walking that line. And then Dr. Bailey's aware of this as well, because the only way we can do our jobs is to follow the process that has been designed. That doesn't handcuff us from getting into it and finding out ourselves. So I wanted you here to hear the good, bad, and the ugly, because we're all adults, we signed up for it, and we're trying to see this process through professional. My personal stance is I hadn't seen enough of this process to, I mean, honestly, the agenda clicked. Determine the PIP first, then move into the evaluation. We're deciding to end the PIP, continue.
But we're still on evaluation.
So, well, I know, but the agenda in order.
Mr. Chairman, ultimately, I just want all of us as board members to be absolutely honest and sincere in the motivation for what we say and what we do at this table.
Okay, I had said drop the idea of going back and re-voting. I don't think that's a good idea. We've already went through all this work. Getting this all together to the point, I think I would like to call for a motion and be specific in your motion if you're disagreeing with anything that's listed here. And then I think that would be the appropriate way. Every board member can vote. I think that'd be the appropriate way to move forward here.
I'll move that we see this evaluation as compliant. And I don't see how we do it any other way, to tell you the truth. 5 out of 7 were combined. I don't know how you make it any different.
Mr. Casper, your motions said to see this. Can you say that again?
I make a motion that we find this evaluation as compliant.
So you're approving basically as presented.
I am.
Mr. Casner, was submitted to us as, perhaps adopting it as satisfactory. Is that satisfactory or compliant? I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I'm overstepping.
Do we have a choice either way? It's either compliant or not compliant.
If you're
That's
approving,
the problem with the
if you're approving it as is, Mr. Casper, then it's marked as satisfactory.
satisfactory though.
I'll second that motion for Mr. Casper, seconded by Mr. Wallstead. Any discussion? Go ahead, Mr. John.
Yeah, this is my final comment. Looking at the results of the 360 evaluation, I think is highly concerning to me as one board member, and it should be highly concerning to the entire board as it relates to the current culture and the climate that obviously exists across the district. That culture and climate is not one, in my opinion, that will breed long-term success of the staff and the students that we serve in this district. And I think when we put the performance improvement plan in place, particularly with the listening sessions and some of the data that was specifically requested, that was going to tell me as an individual board member on whether or not there was an opportunity to see the change and improvement that I think the full board was looking for when that PIP was put in place. And I've really seen a lack of follow through in very specific areas that's disheartening to me. And in my personal opinion, we're at a point that I just don't see that getting better under the current leadership right now.
Any other board members? Mr. Swink, go ahead.
I would echo Mr. Junt's sentiments. I think there has been improvement in areas, but I think some things have been damaged beyond repair. And I think we as a evaluator of this person, it's not an attack on an individual's character, but some things don't mesh. And I think at this point, we're going to say something is satisfactory when we have as a board, have not seen that accomplished, in my opinion. I would hope that board members will in the future evaluate on the data that's given to us in more detail, so that we can ensure that our district can continue to move forward, get better and improve. And this is year 3. This isn't year 1. And we should definitely keep pushing to strive to be the best for our students. And I would hope that when this vote goes through this evening, that Dr. Fadley would take the time to evaluate the comments here this evening and know that we have a long road ahead of us still.
I'm not gonna change any of my votes. I do agree with you. If I had the opportunity, there was only one that I would change. I was very dismayed by the Vital Network information, and I wanted to make sure that I addressed that. And the fact that that survey staff had talked about that they have value in their work. They value their students. They value their parents, and they know that their students value them. But that they feel sharing their opinion has no value.
Was that under communication this week?
That would have been under number 7, engaging WIA members. And
Oh, but on the
cited-
Vital Network surveys.
Yep, he cited the Vital Network survey within the self-evaluation. So I'm going off of that specific survey. And that was concerning to me.
Well, the question, I feel comfortable discussing my concern with leadership. That's all.
That was one of the lowest scores. And that's concerning to me. And the 360, which I have discussed with you on numerous occasions, has me very, very concerned, and that is a culture, that is a leadership piece. Now, the one thing that I do want to say is I have seen growth in you, Dr. Fadley. I have seen changes in positivity, and I have seen changes in the way that you are leading. However, I have seen a lot of things still remaining stagnant and not changing, and that is concerning to me. You can read the rest of my comments at your leisure. That was my biggest pieces.
Any other comments from the board?
In this 360 report, do we even know who did the comments? I mean,
It was anonymous.
Is anonymous.
it's anonymous.
Well, it was only admins. It was
What's his
anonymous.
Right, but we don't know if one guy or two people are writing all of it. You know, I mean, that's the problem with this deal, I mean, I just. You know, I think we have to somehow get everybody together and have. You know, the team get together and just lay it out. Tell each other what is the problem. And see if we can't come to some, because it's gonna have to happen sometime. I mean, all the admins are gonna have to get together and talk to Dr. Fadley and say, I don't agree with this, I don't agree with that, whatever. We're gonna have to have that session, whether it's Dr. Fadley or somebody else. And we need to figure that out, we're gonna do that. If we don't, we're never gonna get there. And you know, somehow, we all have to be adults. And we all have to be able to say what's on our mind. And we all have to get some answer for what our question is. So I'm hoping that can happen at some point in time.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fresh.
I think there's layers to it. The school district is a big business, one of the bigger businesses in the community. And when you think about all of the voices, all the stakeholders here, it's unfortunately a lot more complicated than getting the admin thing to the same room. I think, and what I've learned so far, there is a disconnect between our teachers, building admins, and this building. It's not just this building and our schools. So there's more layers than just Dr. Fadley in this building meeting with our building admins, or Dr. Fadley meeting with just all the admins in this building. It's Dr. Fadley building admins, this building, admins of all of our schools, teachers, pairs in all of our schools, janitors, infrastructure. It is. Now, when I dive back into culture, if our culture surveys are telling us that staff can't get to the table to communicate these things, optics automatically go here. Because you set the table, you create that table. So at the end of the day, we just have to reflect on what are our current strategies, what are our current priorities, and how are we attacking and addressing those priorities. If we can't celebrate the wins in this school district, because there are certain wins in this school district, infrastructure wise, new buildings coming, we can't celebrate those things because our staff aren't happy and feeling supported in their current roles, then we need to reprioritize. Because nothing comes before, no building, no curriculum, nothing comes before our educators being empowered in their roles. So we might need to see what's at this table, how we're setting it, and who's coming to it. Better, who's not coming to it and why. Because that's what I'm learning on my independent search as a new board member, is that we had 2 building admins out of this building, had no idea of the annual report. Not a clue. They didn't have a clue. And it's something that this district, this building, and this table has been celebrating for 2 months now. And there's staff in this district that had no idea it was out. So we might need to see what's at this table, who's coming to this table, who's not coming to the table. And it's going to take a lot more than just getting our admins together. It's going to take a lot more than just getting our teachers together, a lot more than just getting our this building together. We do have to reflect and own it. It starts with you, and creating that approachability so that we can dive into these issues, so that we can move to the wins that we're seeing in our district, but we can't celebrate them yet because there's so much tension. And that's what I perceived the last couple of weeks.
So
Right, recommended.
So, the 360 evaluation, yes, I did reflect and I read every single, comment, multiple times, especially the ones that were negative. And did that internal self-reflection on what I can do differently to change that perception. I would add also that there are some things that were communicated that are blatantly false, and I'll just leave it at that. It wasn't all true. But perception is individual's reality. But I also want to point out that there were a number of those 360 evaluations that were stellar, and quite a few of them from the administration in this district. So I don't want to forget that as well, because we've spent a lot of time focusing on the negative, but we don't always focus on the positive, to Mr. Marshall's point. But there were a lot of positives that came out of that 360 survey. I don't know how to address it other than read and reflect and try to figure out how to do better. But in order for us to have adult conversations, I encourage everyone to come into my office. My door's been open. I've been at schools, I've been at all the schools, been in all the classrooms, the exception of a few at the high school and a few at the middle school, because it's going to take me a longer period of time to get to all of those. But I have been available and I have been present, and I have been there for staff to pull me aside if they want and have a conversation with me. That is an improvement that is significant. I'm very proud of that. 3 times a week at a different school, every week, visiting classrooms and welcoming students and interacting with people. And it's really brought a lot of joy to my job as superintendent, because it's not always roses. But those days are, and those times are, because the things that are happening in this organization, if we look back to July of 22, there have been so many improvements, not by me, but by the team that's leading. And that includes teachers, teacher leaders, that includes support staff, that includes administration. A lot of very positive things happening that we couldn't say prior to that. So I'm very proud of the work of the team. And I put my shoes on every morning, and I come to try to make a difference. That's all I can do.
That's Mr. Swett, I had a question. Me and you were discussing earlier engagement numbers on a staff survey on school culture. That one was marked. Yeah,
I just want to just a general reminder that it's 5:36. And if I'm going to be attending the city commission meeting that starts at 6, I'm going to need to leave here in a couple minutes.
Yes, no, I understand. Everyone understands that. Just like so we were talking about the engagement members on staff and school culture. That one was marked non-compliant. So there's, as is presented to you, there's 2 that were non-compliant engagement members and staff on a school culture survey. And then there was the other one that was marked non-compliant, which is,
Trust.
what's that?
Learn
The
trust.
recent actions have created a lack of trust in your role as superintendent by not following the following policies. So those were the 2 that were marked non-compliant. I will call for any final discussion before we call the poll. Okay. Student. Langford, do you call the roll?
Darsh.
Aye.
Wheeler,
No,
Swint,
No.
Casmer.
Aye.
Halsted,
Yes.
Junt,
Nay.
Renner.
Aye. Motion passes. We are on to the next agenda item, which is the person.
Yeah, I need a dismissed to go to the city.
Yes, question. Thank you. I guess I'm looking for direction from the board. Whether we want to keep the plan in place, remove the plan, or add or change things, remove things from the plan. I spoke with Chris Hammond. And it is, you can add things, you can remove things. So I guess I'm looking for direction. I don't know. If we want to sit down and write this tonight, if we want to send this to a committee to come up with something, the board wants to give me direction to write something up and come back to you. I guess I'm looking for your direction. I believe you still need to be on personal. So.
I do too, and I think maybe, you know, people like Chris and Corey and should maybe get with you and talk to you about that. You know, one specific deal that they, you know, they really have a problem with and rewrite that. I mean, or, I mean, obviously you don't think it should be needed to be rewritten, but we need to, I think, for everybody's on the same page. I guess there. And maybe there's other things that I think can help him decide what to do. I mean, I think, I don't know, obviously you have some other things we could put in that VIP, you know, I mean.
I look at it this way, there were multiple areas that this evening this board marked compliant. And if that is the feeling that they are now compliant, why would those items still be included within the PIP? You have marked them in compliance. Those should no longer be included, in my opinion, because you've said he's met. That's the prerogative of this board. That's the vote you just took when you approved his evaluation. The evaluation was based on the PIP. I would not be the individual that I would have sit at a table to design this PIP, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I wouldn't volunteer for it. Because the board sees it a different way than what I see it.
John?
I would agree with Mr. Swint, and I may disagree that some of these may have been non-compliant, but we speak as one voice. The board has voted on the evaluation, and if an area has been marked on the existing PIP as compliant, there's nothing further to follow up on that item at this point in time. Compliant. So anything on there that was compliant is off the PIP. Anything that was listed as non-compliant stays on the PIP. And if there are certainly areas that majority of the board has concerns on that wasn't included in the first PIP, those should be added to the document.
I personally feel that inconsistency in understanding amongst board members of what the PIP is calling for in detail. And that's just what I'm perceiving based on not only just how the board voted, but how it's being communicated, the lack of discussions in board meetings since the summer. I would call for a review of what's being asked and further detail being put into. I personally feel like I would like to leave it all open because I'm still diving into if it's happening. My personal perception is staff determine if the PIP is concluded, if it's a culture-based PIP. And what I'm seeing, it's not. We need more time in the PIP. I would hate to be handcuffed as a new board member by compliancy or non-compliancy and not being able to continue to evaluate those. Because my personal, how I handled this was based on conversations we've had as a board leading up to this, conversations I've had outside leading up to this, or lack thereof, which has led to, I think, a mixed vote from the board. I don't think everyone's on the same page with what this PIP has been. It's what I said, asking. Truly. Things are being turned in and it's and done, but is the PIP doing what it's being designed to? Not just going through the motions. So I would call for it to be revitalized and to open the window of review. I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair.
Let's give Mr. Lawson and Mrs. Beater a chance to go and then open up for a motion. That way everyone's having some chance. Go ahead, Mrs. Beater.
Yeah, I believe that he needs to stay on the PIP. I understand exactly where you're coming from, both Mr. John and Mr. Smith in regards to the way the board voted. I was a no. I did not feel that he met satisfactory, but, we are a whole board, so when we leave this room, that's the way we have to go, but, that PIP is not completed yet at all. There are still areas that need significant, work. I wonder if a revitalization of the PIP is not warranted. You know, I like a lot of what Mr. Barshin's had to say, maybe another dive in or better explanations on certain aspects of it. It has been, what, 6 months since we created that PIP? Approximately?
Yeah, about 6. Yep.
So revitalizing it after this first evaluation may not be a bad idea. There is still, just based on surveys and based on the information that was collected from all of us board members, there is still a significant issue with trust. And there's a significant issue with engaging the members, which is our educators. And that Vital Network survey that was done in regards to the educators showed that there are significant discrepancies between what's going on in the district office and what's happening in those classrooms and what's happening in those individual buildings. And there is some type of disconnect. There's a wall that's been built and I don't understand why that wall is there. It needs to be removed. And then the 360. I lost a lot of sleep over that 360.
Also, I'll let you go and I'll open up for a motion.
I just wonder if I polled each board member individually and said, what do you believe the intent of the PIP really is? I wonder if we'd have 7 different answers. Are we trying to take a professional approach to the challenges that we face and try to do things diplomatically and see what happens as a result? Do we believe that the offenses that we believe and witnessed between Dr. Friedley and staff are redeemable and reconcilable, or are they unredeemable? What's the end result? What do you hope to achieve with the PIP? And I think I would really like to know the board's motivation in the PIP. Do you really want to make an investment in Dr. Friedley? If it is a personal improvement plan, I mean, do you really believe in this man and want to pour into invest? Or are we simply just doing the protocol and kind of going through the motions and have a whole different conversation as a result of that? I mean, I just feel like there's an elephant in the room and we need to discuss really what we want to see happen in all of this. What's the intent and the motive behind the PIP? That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
We believe it's a redeemable and reconcilable relationship. Let's throw gas on the fire.
Well, I would open up the floor for a motion, whether the board thinks we continue the improvement plan, remove it, or modify it. I would just ask that you write a little direction in your motion. If it's to continue and modify it, then how, is it going to be a committee looking at it? Is it going to be me that's going to be doing it, or who's going to do it?
I'll make a motion that we continue the professional improvement plan with modifications to be created by a committee to consist of 2 board members and the chair.
I'll second that.
What are the modifications we?
That would need to happen, that discussion would need to happen in that committee. And then that information can be provided to the rest of the board for their review and or subsequent adjustments based on what the committee has to say. And I'd be more than happy to volunteer my best.
Yeah, right, it's actually appropriate for leadership. So to also have a spot in this. It can be anonymous, it can be someone that's identified to speak on behalf of them. I don't want to put anyone as a target, but it would help to identify, it would help me as a board member, knowing that the PIP is being driven by internal stakeholders as well as external.
I think that creates a target on someone's back, honestly.
I think it crosses the line of causing the board major issues if and when they were to decide they need to do something different. And the policies of the school district are designed when there are complaints, problems, etc. Those are funneled through the board president for board policy to keep the entire school board, who is the jury at the trial, impartial. And I think based off of what we're dealing with here, the emotions, background, the history, I can see that turning into personnel complaints that then should be handled by the board president. And if we have a committee or the full board receiving that feedback, it jeopardizes the impartiality of the jury of the school board.
Yeah, about bringing, you are referencing bringing outsiders in, correct?
Staff members essentially.
Exactly, yes. It does, I know that you're newer on the board, Mr. Marsh, but does that resonate with you?
Oh, no, I get it.
Okay,
I
good.
get it. There's formalities to it, I think are, and maybe I will refine. We have a good template for a PIP. I don't think we need someone to dive and redo the PIP. But I personally feel that there is a lack of consistency in what the PIP is being asked. Who better to give us that consistency than the staff? So that's, now, I understand how that might be crossing some lines. I respect that. I want to know what's really happening. And I want things to really get better. I'm not here every day.
Yeah.
And if people are putting targets on themselves, they might already be a target. That's what we're after, right? That's what we're trying to protect, is for people to feel like they have a strong voice, they can voice it without being a target because they have a voice.
Yeah.
We can continue on individual pursuits. We can continue to, from our perspectives, refine the PIP so we can try to get what we're looking for to get out of it. I kind of like where Commissioner Wall said was coming. If we're not going to sit here and say exactly what we want out of the PIP, then we need something that we can all agree is bona fide and it will give us what the staff are wanting out of the PIP, which is what they want is more important than what it's just how it boils down. It's not pretty. I understand that. That's why we're here.
We have two surveys that we can use data off of in order to create the PIP, the 360 and the Vital Network. Both of those are relatively current. That's a good starting. When I did the evaluation, I heavily focused, aside from anecdotal information and firsthand observations of my own, I looked at those two surveys because they were referenced multiple times in the self-evaluation. So I looked at that as, all right, I'm going to use this in my deliberation of the evaluation, and using those documents may be a good starting point for making upgrades or additions to the PIP.
I would just ask that the board give direction on who they want. I think the motion said the chair, correct?
Chair and two board members
I think we
equaling a total
I
of
think
3.
we should decide that here today, that motion be amended to include the names of those two board members, so that's.
I'm gonna amend the motion. I think the full board. Don't write anything down yet. I'm gonna amend the motion that the full board work on the PIP document in a board workshop setting.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
I think you're putting whoever's on the committee in a losing position. There's a lot of strong feelings on both sides of this issue, and I think regardless of the makeup and the representation of who those members are, somebody's possibly not gonna be happy on what the final product of that PIP is. So I think we all sit around the table and discuss it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I'm certainly not opposed to that. We just have to make sure there's lots of food, because this could be long.
Special movements. Okay. Is there any more discussion?
It wasn't a second to the
No, there
amendment.
was a second.
Yes, there was.
Otherwise,
Mr. Wallstead seconded it.
Okay. Okay, is there any discussion on the amendment? I think that's, would be a wise move. So. Okay, last call for discussion on the amendment. Mrs. Langford, you can call the roll.
Wheeler,
I,
Swint,
Aye.
Casmer,
I,
Wolfstad,
Yes.
Junt,
Aye.
Barsh, Renner.
Aye. Okay, now we're on to the full motion. Mrs. Langford, can you read that off?
If I can figure out what order to say it. Motion to continue the personal improvement plan. Let me just read what was there. Motion to continue the personal improvement plan with modifications to be made by a committee to be made up of 2 board members and the chair made by Wheeler, but motion to amend the full motion that the full board work on the PIP document in a board workshop setting.
that's correct.
Any final?
That was your intent, correct?
Yeah, the intent is the PIP stays in place, modifications are discussed as a whole board and workshop, and then obviously we'd have to vote on the final document that comes out of that workshop at some point.
So are we hoping to work on this before the monthly regular meeting in December and then have something there? Or?
I personally,
Thoughts?
I'd personally like to see something into effect as an update before January 1. That way it would give a full 4 months prior to the next evaluation. If we could get it done sooner, that would be great.
Were you still intending on calling a second special meeting in November?
Yeah, do you think it'd be appropriate to do it at that same meeting?
I think that should be, I think the PIP should be the first agenda item on that meeting, and then
Okay. Okay. Mr. Sweet. What your thoughts there on that?
I agree.
Okay. Yeah, you're shaking your head, yes. Okay, so. We'll call a special meeting sometime in November. See how far we get. Maybe we'll have it done by the monthly regular meeting in December. I would think we could have it done before then.
Yeah, we should be able to. I mean, if everyone comes prepared and everyone comes with suggestions and ideas, and we try our best to keep the emotional pieces out, try to keep this more clinical.
Okay. Okay, so Langford, I think you can call the roll. You can call the roll.
No, I'll be out of town the week of Thanksgiving. Okay.
it's like you were cooking turkey for us out there.
Swint,
Aye.
Casmer,
I,
Wolfstad,
Yes.
Junt,
Aye.
Barsh, Wheeler,
Aye,
Renner.
Right. Okay, motion passes. We have a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign. Adjourned at 5:06.